Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending where you are. Welcome to this second day of the African Soil Laboratory Network. This is the fourth meeting of this network of the Afrilab. We are really happy to see you all here. We're waiting a couple of minutes to allow everyone to connect. We are seeing many people connecting now. Today's session, we will focus on the harmonization of the standard operating procedure, the proficiency test. So a little bit of overview of the results from the performance of the Afrilab laboratories that joined the GLOSOLAN PT. And we will talk a little bit about the relation between laboratories and farmers. And we have also some experts that we invite to do this meeting to give such presentation. Before starting, in order to allow the other participants to join, I would like to show you the new version of the GLOSOLAN website. So in order to let you get more familiar with the new web page of GLOSOLAN, because we changed a little bit the web page. So I hope you see my screen. Is it visible? Okay. So this is the GSP web page, the Global Soil Partnership web page. If you go here down, there is the section for the technical networks, or you can access also here on the top menu. If you click on GLOSOLAN, you are addressed to the new web page that we developed. So here on the top, you have a carousel with the main news of the network. So job vacancies, new publications, new events, and so on. Here you have a section on the impact of good quality data on a series of stakeholders, from soil laboratories to donors and farmers, then all the areas of work of the network. So you can click on each section to get more information on these topics. So if you're interested to know more about the equipment or what GLOSOLAN is doing on health and safety, or the training that we gave so far, soil spectroscopy, quality assurance and quality control, or indeed the standard operating procedures, you can just click on this section and you will be addressed to the section of the web page. So for instance, here, capacity development, you will see all the training that we implemented so far on these areas of work. So there are trainings on wet chemistry, trainings on soil spectroscopy, trainings on health and safety in the laboratory, and so on quality control and quality assurance. So you can, for instance, click on one of these topics, for instance, health and safety, and you can watch again the recording of the video or go again through the presentation. So all the materials is here. The trainings have been implemented in several languages. So for in this case, for health and safety, we have the training in French, Arabic, and English, but also the other training have been implemented in several languages. Then we have the governance here to know more about the governance of the network. So to know more about the GLOSOLAN governance, the chair, vice chairs, the steering committee, and then the link to the two networks that are closely related to GLOSOLAN. So INFA, the network on fertilizer analysis, and the initiative on soil spectroscopy. Then here there is a section on the regional soil laboratory networks, and here by clicking on the regions, you may know more about the regional network in that area. So if you want to know more about Afrilab, just click on the Africa region. Here to know more about the national networks. Then here there is a repository when you can get more information on all materials developed by the network, by GLOSOLAN. So highlights, the job vacancies, and so on. Everything is here if you want to go through a document, reports of a meeting, of the proficiency test, the SOPs, and so on. And then here there are information on this is a section on the GLOSOLAN meetings. So all the meetings of the network implemented so far. And you have the report, the presentation, the recordings of that. And here information on the next meeting. So again, please put in your agenda The next GLOSOLAN meeting will take place from the 22nd to 24th of November, 2022. So in about a month. Here, there is the platform on soil import legislation. So here, by clicking on a country, you may get information on the requirements needed to import soil samples in that country. So if you have to organize a proficiency test, if you have to import or send samples to another country for advanced analysis, and you want to know more about the proper way to package, label, and even all the documents that are needed, you may need to apply to ship properly the document. You may have information here by clicking on the country. Here there is all the map reporting all the members of the network. You can click on each laboratory to know more about the location, the head of the laboratory, and then some open question that will allow you to have more information on the network. If you have a fellow laboratory who wants to register in the network, you can just come here and know more. How can I register my laboratory in GLOSOLAN to download the registration form? So I warmly invite you to navigate, surf this webpage. I will put the link in the chat so you can get yourself more familiar with the network and its new webpage. I see now Mr. Christian Hartmann connected. So we will start now the item on the PT following today's agenda.
Let me share
okay, I will give the floor to Christian Hartmann from the IRD France, who will present an overview of the performance of the laboratories from Afrilab that joined the proficiency test organized by GLOSOLAN in 2021, but that was basically implemented in 2022. So, Christian, over to you.
Yes, do you see my screen?
Yeah, we see very well.
Okay, let me, okay, so if I want to change here, okay. Yes, as you mentioned, the samples were prepared last year and sent at the beginning of this year, and we have recently stopped it because only recently, unlike what we expected, and it was discussed yesterday, it takes a long time finally to send the samples to the countries. So what is the objective of this interlaboratory comparison or proficiency test? We have said yesterday that the laboratories are factories that are able to change samples into analytical results. You see, the clients bring the samples and you have to provide results. So you are doing this, but what is the quality and the comparability of the result you produce? This is why this is also the benefit of the interlaboratory comparison. It helps you to measure this. How? Because you have received samples of a controlled, composition. We know what is inside the sample. Yesterday, it was discussed also about the ISO 17025, but GLOSOLAN, the Global Soil Partnership, and GLOSOLAN are not here to give you marks. The main point that you must remember is GSP is here to provide support and recommendations, and not to give you a note or a mark. So even if the results are not what you expect, what you have to do is to contact us or contact your colleagues and to get support and recommendations. So let's see first how this PT was organized. Okay, the procedure. We spoke yesterday about the samples that have been sent around the world, and this is always a little bit ridiculous for me to see all this regulation when we speak about 100 grams. I think most of you have seen the samples, but perhaps some of you did not see it. The samples that we discussed yesterday, you see, is this bag, this big bag containing 10 small bags. Each bag had 10 grams of soil inside, and this is a total of 100 grams of soils irradiated, and that has to be destroyed. So this is what we discussed about. The samples were labeled. In each set, you had 10 bags, and the bags were labeled GLO 01 to GLO 10. But in fact, you had to analyze 10 soils, but there were only 6 different soil types. One of the soil was repeated 5 times. You had, in fact, 5 blind replicates in the set of samples that you have received. The idea here was to test also the precision of the labs. So these samples were randomly distributed when the samples A, B, C, D were ordered according to the carbon content, from the lowest to the highest carbon content. So in fact, the sample E that was repeated 5 times had exactly, of course, the same sample content. But for you, everything is random, and we keep confidential the way to go from one set to the other set of numbers. There were 3 analytical parameters to measure, and each of them with different methods. So carbon, you had 3 methods, nitrogen 2 methods, and phosphorus 3 methods. Carbon was mandatory, and the other analyses were optional because we wanted to focus on carbon measurement because it's a key issue and a high priority in a world with global warming and climate change. So today I will mention only quickly about these carbon samples. The idea is not to present all the results, but to explain you a little bit what is the concept between that interlab comparison. So first, the participant at the global scale, worldwide, for carbon wall clay black and Dumas and loss of ignition. So you see that for wall clay black, there was 160 participants, approximately 50 for Dumas, and 40 labs provided results for the loss of ignition. If we look now the answer, the participants in the different region, this is the figure for the different regions. So, and they were 8 regions: Africa, Latin America, Asia, Europe, NINA, that is Near East and North Africa, North America, Eurasia, Pacific. And you see that 5 regions, in fact, had a significant participation. And in the other 3 regions, there were very few labs answering. So Africa, the most common, the most frequent analysis, just like global scale, was carbon wall clay black, when Dumas and loss of ignition were more rare. Sorry, up here. So once we have the data, we want to make descriptive statistics. So first, have a quick look to individual results of each sample. I told you they were 6 soil type, 10 samples, and I just, for this, at the beginning, take the example of the soil D. So you will see the figures. On the left side is the carbon content for each region. You see the carbon wall clay black of the carbon content in percentage, and on the x-axis, it's the different regions. Africa is positioned in first because the regions are ordered according to the alphabetical order. So here I show you all the results that were provided by the different participants for Africa, and here for all the other regions. So in statistics, we want to know what is the central tendency and what is the variability. Lucrecia has insisted yesterday on the variability, but okay. So here you see, this is this, you have different way to present the central tendency, that in this example is the mean, and the variability is the standard deviation. So there are different ways to do the descriptive statistic. Now I will show this, the mean, standard deviation, but also the coefficient of variation to be able to compare the different samples. So for the soil D, you have, so as we said, on the left side, the carbon content in percentage for 0 to 6%. On the y-axis, you have the different regions: Africa, America, Latin America, Asia, Europe, NINA, and the small number nearby is the number of results that we had for these regions. So here we have the mean, as I mentioned to you, and the SD. It's the same result as you have seen previously. But now I don't show the individual result. I'll also only show the mean and the standard deviation. And standard deviation is the uncertainty that was mentioned yesterday by Lucrecia, and that is necessary to make the scientific conclusion. You have also the coefficient of variation, that is in fact the standard deviation divided by the value of the mean. So for example, here we have 0.5% that is the SD, and 3% approximately that is the mean. And so the coefficient of variation is 15%. The standard deviation represents 15% of the mean. And this is very useful to compare the different regions, but also the different type of samples that have very different carbon content, as you will see. I will give you immediately the conclusion before showing the results so you can focus on what is important. You will see that the mean is similar in all the regions, but the SD depends more on the regions. And one main aspect is that the SD, the standard deviation, the uncertainty is the highest in Africa. Let's have a look. So here you have soil B, soil C, and you see the average value is nearly the same, a little bit less than 2% carbon. And the coefficient of variation is nearly 30% when it's only 20% for the other region. And again, for soil C, it's quite similar in all regions, 20%, when it's nearly 20 in all of the regions, except Asia in this case. But if we look now the result D and E1, for example, as you have seen, again, we have very similar carbon content, average carbon content, mean values, but very different coefficient of variation and higher for Africa compared to the other regions. Soil E1 and F, you see here also we have nearly 6% higher. The soil F was an extreme soil with the highest carbon content. You see here, the carbon content is ranging 0 to 10. It was the highest carbon content, nearly 6%. Here I have indicated the exact value, so you can, of a mean. So you can see the different regions have very similar mean, as I told you, but different standard coefficient of variation. This means different standard deviation, and it's higher in Africa compared to, generally compared to other regions. So this was the soil A that had, sorry, I think this here, yes, sorry. The soil A is here. This was the poorest soil. It was 0.2% of carbon. And of course, in this case, it's very difficult to make a precise analysis. So you have very high standard deviation, yes, and coefficient of variation that is 60%, sorry, low standard deviation, but compared to the result, this makes a high coefficient of variation. And you have here the soil F that is 6%. You remember, it's a different scale. So for the extreme values, you see, it's very difficult to have a low uncertainty. So as we have seen this result, we started to look at them, even if it took long time to get all the results. We have had a look since a long time about this, since the beginning of the year, and we have already planned, we is the British Geological Survey, IID and GLOSOLAN, to organize another PT, especially for Africa, to help you after having identified your problem, to be able to improve the quality and the comparability of your data. What we suggest, according to this result, is to organize laboratory trainings. It seems very important that the people can meet in the lab, work together. And it was mentioned yesterday, of course, there is a lot of problem of communication, even internet connections, not speaking about traveling in Africa, but it's necessary to get financial support for this, if possible, from GSP and from FAO or national, some countries or whatever donors could support this action. And we need also laboratories that can provide technical support. And yesterday we have some labs that already mentioned they volunteer to welcome and host trainings. And this for me is extremely important, that it's possible to organize a face-to-face laboratory training. In the descriptive statistic, there is another way to show the result, the central tendency and the variability is using the median and the median absolute deviation. So this is what I'm going to do to show you now using box plot. And you remember we have the samples now, I showed all the samples. On the x-axis, now the results are only for Africa. And along the x-axis, you have the 10 samples that you have analyzed. A has the lowest carbon content, close to 0.2, and F, the highest, close to 6%. What you will see now is box plot. For the box plot, in fact, the red line represents the median. This means 50% of the results are above and 50% of the results are below the median. And here, for example, when you see a box plot like this, you see that the results are unbalanced. It's not a Gaussian distribution, it's not randomly distributed. I will not go further on this, but this can be discussed later again. As I mentioned, lowest, highest content. And remember also, you had 5 blind replicates. It was blind for you, but of course, the labs should provide 5 times the same results. So let's focus on this. And in fact, again, we see that we have quite a similar median, that is the red line in the middle. But you can see that the distribution is very different. And also the length of this that shows, in fact, the interquartile range. I will not describe here, but this shows that they are different distribution. And this means that when analyzing several times the same sample, the same result was not produced. So this, our recommendation that all the labs should use internal quality control samples to check the result, because this means that probably the samples have been analyzed, there were a problem somewhere, but the labs were not able to detect it. And for this, the GSP, the GLOSOLAN has already made documents and trainings recommendation to prepare your internal quality control. I warmly recommend you to urgently prepare these internal quality control samples if you have not done it, and we can make recommendations. This is very urgent to do and very important. Just to show that with different results, I will not show carbon content, carbon dumas, but it was just to mention about the different methods provide different results. Yesterday also, we have shown that with carbon dumas, you have a little bit higher result usually because it's total carbon instead of organic carbon. But just to show you loss of ignition, so on the left side, you have a carbon content, and you see now we have a much wider range, the 10 samples, and this is the result. The result is for Nina. Sorry, I made a mistake when I made a copy paste, but anyway, it's the same. You see that the ordering of a sample is no more the same, and you have one sample that is very different. And it was the same for Africa. This sample, when analyzed with loss of ignition, provides a very different result. And as you have seen, you have much higher value, 2 times higher than what was compared. So carbon content, the conclusion of the result from the different method is carbon content coming from different methods cannot be compared. So you must always very clearly indicate which method you have used when providing the result. And this is especially important for the activities or action or outcomes from the GSP concerning the soil mapping. It's very important to know if the soil samples have been analyzed with the same methods or not. So now a quick look to the individual laboratory performances. For each lab that has participated to the PT, you will receive a figure that looks like this. Okay, with the Z-score on the left, 10 results for the 10 samples that you have here, and a range or a legend. So how to interpret this? If the results are between -2 and +2, this is green color, is satisfactory. If it's between -2 and -3 or +2 and +3, this is questionable. We cannot say that the results are not correct, but there's a question about how big, because for statistical reason that I have explained and can already explain later on, but this result cannot be considered as incorrect, just questionable. But if you are below -3 or higher than +3, this is unsatisfactory, and this means there is a problem. So as I told you, how to interpret this, the results are good. And if you have orange, this is questionable. If you have red, this means there's a problem. And here there is a second problem. Remember that these samples E1 to E5 were exactly the same. And it seems that the lab has not provided the same result. So this means there is a precision problem, and this should have been detected using internal quality control samples. So thank you for your attention. And if you have some question, I would be more than happy to answer you.
Thanks a lot, Christian. Merci beaucoup. Today we don't have our interpreters because yesterday we found out that mostly all participants were fluent in English, but if there is any request for clarification in French, for instance, Christian can give maybe, let's see, I don't see any question, but if il y a des participants qui préfèrent parler en français.
Ouais. Oui, oui, je peux répondre en français s'il y a des questions en français, sans problème, monsieur.
I see there are some hands up. Also, we have participants from Portuguese-speaking countries of Africa. So I know Antonia is here. Entonces, Antonia, si tienes preguntas, puede compartir con nosotros también. Thanks a lot, Christian, for the presentation on APT. And indeed, you already highlight a nice way forward, because indeed the PT is not something that we consider a point of arrival, but as a starting point. So we know that based on the results of the PT of the Afrilab members, we know the way forward. We use the outcomes of this performance to define what are their needs. So Christian highlighted that there is a need for better precision of the results of the analysis of the soils when these reach laboratories operating in the region. Therefore, from this point of view, from this consideration, we would like to organize another PT to launch within Afrilab, to test again the proficiency of the African laboratories, and organize an in-person training to figure out what are the needs. There is a need for better calibration. There is a need to learn how to run internal reference samples to have better quality control within the laboratories. There is a need to build capacity to organize a proficiency test among laboratories operating in the same country and in the Afrilab. So we will do our best to organize an in-person training next year and to organize a PT among Afrilab members next year. We have to discuss on which parameters to target. There was a proposal, I remember, to focus on soil fertility, so to keep on working on organic carbon, maybe including CEC and pH.
Not really on soil fertility, but on because GLOSOLAN is a network of laboratory people. And in fact, we wanted to focus also on pH, because pH is very important to detect soil degradation. And it seems a very easy instrument to use. You will always get a result. But what is the quality of a result? What is the uncertainty? So we'll focus on pH and carbon. But I see there are many hands.
Yeah, let's give the floor to them. But indeed, the idea was to keep like, maybe we can mix pH, carbon, and CC, but we will discuss later. Yeah, let's give the floor to Mohamed Ouguet.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Voilà, je suis Mohamed Ouguet de Djibouti, point focal de partenaire mondial du sol, Global Soil Partnership.
Yeah.
Je remercie pour la présentation très riche de Christiane, ma chère Christiane, qui a bien expliqué. Nous sommes membres depuis la création de GLOSOLAN, mais nous n'avons pas pu bénéficier des échantillons pour analyser. Malgré notre pétition à plusieurs fois, nous avons sollicité notre équipe de la FAO que l'échantillon soit parvenu au labo, mais jusqu'à présent, même cette année, on vient de relancer et on a demandé qu'on participe à nouveau, en espérant que l'échantillon viendra à temps. Ça, c'est notre première préoccupation. Deuxième préoccupation, comme vous le savez, Djibouti est un pays aride, aucune source d'eau en surface. Nous luttons à la dégradation, comme le professeur Christian a rappelé. Nos sols sont vraiment très arides et très salins. Nous demanderons un renforcement des capacités très particulières pour Djibouti, pour pouvoir appuyer comment nos techniciens et nos équipes bénéficient d'une formation particulière, voire PhD, master, quoi. Merci pour votre attention.
Oui, en fait, donc c'est ce que j'ai dit. Je crois que c'est une centaine d'échantillons, je me souviens plus, c'est une centaine d'échantillons qui ont été préparés pour la prochaine comparaison interlaboratoire. Donc je pense que surtout si vous n'avez pas pu participer au précédent test, je pense qu'il n'y aura aucun problème pour vous envoyer un échantillon. Mais comme l'a dit également Filippo, c'est des organisations très lourdes et une fois que c'est parti, c'est assez difficile d'avoir de la flexibilité. Mais je pense qu'il n'y aura aucun problème pour Djibouti. Que je connais d'ailleurs, j'ai fait mon stage de mémoire de fin d'études d'ingénieur à Djibouti et ce sera avec plaisir que j'y retournerai.
Voilà. Moi, personnellement, je suis à la recherche d'un encadrant pour la thèse. Je voulais travailler sur la question de...
on va rester focalisé sur les aspects qui concernent tout le monde, mais on peut en rediscuter en privé après parce que je vois qu'il y a d'autres questions.
OK.
So, Filippo, I think you have understood that Djibouti would like to join the next PT, and I think it should not be a problem.
Yeah, sure. Maybe now we can give the floor. Thanks, Mr. Uge, for the question, for taking the floor. I think the next one with the hands up is Abdul Malik Mohammed. So you can unmute yourself and give us your question.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, yesterday I missed due to network problems meeting. I have some questions. Yeah. On all sample, I've seen that coefficient of variation is high for Africans. This means there is variation of results between each laboratory. What's the reason behind this? Because in laboratory, we expect 3 errors: personal error, chemical error, and instrumental error. So which one errors makes this variation? The second one is Mr. Curtis said we organize laboratory training. May this laboratory training include Ethiopians?
Okay.
In addition to if it is include Ethiopians, only on laboratory technician or soil researchers that's working on soil environment. The third question is we want to control the precision. How GLOSOLAN went to plan to control precision, especially in Africa. As we know that in Africa, most chemicals we purchase are low-cost chemicals. For example, in Ethiopia, we use low-value chemical for result laboratory analysis. How we can control these ones? Thank you.
Okay. So your first question was about the uncertainty. First, I would like to stress that all the regions have high uncertainty. The average uncertainty at global scale is 15%, when for carbon dumas it is 6-7%. So the uncertainty is anyway high for all the regions, and the highest is in Africa. So this is why it's a priority. The reasons, as it was mentioned, the GSP, GLOSOLAN try to provide trainings, documents, videos, and so on for the people to work exactly the same way so they can produce the same result. But it's not always easy to implement it in the lab. So this is one of the reasons, even if the explanation seems clear, it's necessary to be in the lab working with someone else. And also what we have seen, I did not show you here, some very extreme values that are probably transcriptions problems or things like this, or problems of the unit, mistakes in the unit. And you see, there can be many reasons. And each lab has to make a diagnosis according to its performance sheet. So I mentioned about the trainings. My neighbor is works in his apartment. I don't know if you hear it or not. So let me know if you cannot understand what I'm saying. Who will participate? Who will join the trainings? First, as I mentioned, GSP need to have donors funding these trainings. That is something expensive. And at the moment, nothing is planned, because it's necessary first that the COVID problem stops, and second, that enough budget to transport the people. And who will participate? The GLOSOLAN, I think it's very important to remember, in GLOSOLAN, it's Global Soil Laboratory Network. So it's really the people doing the work in the lab. It's the quality of the result that is important. And this is necessary for the researcher. But in this case, we focus on the people really doing the work in the lab. You answered about precision. In fact, the GLOSOLAN cannot do much, really. It's every lab manager that has to take action, having quality controls, having its internal quality control samples, and so on. And we can make recommendations, and this is one of the benefits of a network like this. The most experienced laboratories can recommend to the other laboratories. And this is also the reason why they are different regions, because the everyday reality changed from one region to another one. You see, Asia and Africa and Latin America and Europe have different realities in the everyday work. So this is why also already high-performing lab must be involved to help or second or back up the other labs. So the precision is dependent on the activity and the initiative of the lab manager.
If I may add, Christian, I want to add a note, because maybe this was not clarified before. Individual reports are being distributed to all laboratories that submit the results. Most laboratories already received the individual report of their performance during the PT. We are currently distributing the remaining ones. So if you didn't receive the report and you join the GLOSOLAN PT and you submit the results, expect the individual report to be received in like a few days, because we are doing this really these days. Sorry for the delay, but everything should be delivered soon, and a global report will be also prepared later on. Another note I want to add is that we talk about the training, and indeed Christian rightly mentioned that we need funding to cover the costs of an in-person training among all the laboratory technicians. But I would like to tell you that we're already moving on that. The chair and the vice chair of Afrilab, so Mrs. Lesego and Mr. Suge Sheikh, are working on the concept note of a project to be submitted to FAO office in sub-regional office for Africa, and to other offices, to other donors, to allocate the financial resources to cover the costs basically of this activity. So we are doing our best. We're already moving, trying to look for this funding. So hopefully, let's hope we will be able to organize this in-person training. I saw there were some hands up. I don't see them anymore. I think Traoré used to have an hands up, as well as Zing Bertrand used to have the hand up. I don't know if their answers were answered by Christian during the previous one. I think William Egbe, you have the hands up. You may want to take the floor. Please.
Thank you, Filippo. I am happy for the result of the proficiency test that is already out. but sorry to say that Africa, our variance was so high. I learned also that my result feeded that there was a transfer to GLOSOLAN was not received. I made complaint and I've not heard no reply still from you people. Now, what I want to add is that a proficiency test for carbon and pH only will not be enough. I will solicit that we add nitrogen, because nitrogen is one a parameter that every lab analyzes. And if we cannot, if we can't be assured that our results from nitrogen is coming out very well, that means the proficiency test that we are doing will not be completed. That is just my issue, and I want to appeal that instead of taking only pH and organic carbon, let's add nitrogen to it. Thank you very, very much.
Nitrogen was already part of that training, of that PT, sorry, and will, because it does not make a large amount of soil, and so it can be done at any moment. I think if this, once you are doing analyzing carbon, it's easy to analyze nitrogen. So for sure, I agree with this. And I cannot see all the comments, but I saw someone who said, I don't remember where it was, that the reason of the large uncertainty was perhaps because there was a large participation of Africa. So no, on a statistical point of view, this is not true. But what is nice with the large African participation is first that there is a big motivation. And this is one of the reasons we wanted also, we have already prepared samples to do a PT for Africa, not only because of the higher standard deviation, but also because of a high motivation of the laboratories that is always cheering for us. And I enjoy very much to always participate to these meetings. And the objective, you see, is to reduce the uncertainty and the variability of the result. Even if we have a much wider participation, it depends on individual results. And so each lab has to make an effort, and this effort depends mainly on the skills of the people and the motivation of a lab, not so much on the quality of the instruments. And I did not present the carbon dumas today, but even with carbon dumas, you have uncertainty and outliers, big outliers, because the people are not always motivated or not calibrating correctly the instruments or not transcripting correctly and so on. So it just to say that I think I speak in the name of everybody, that we enjoy very much the motivation, and we think that it should be easy to improve very quickly the situation. Yeah.
Thanks, Christian. And we may clarify that maybe it is important that it was, as it was mentioned in the chat, that many times we have first to make sure that laboratory staff members are trained and they know how to calibrate the instrument, how to run internal quality control, and so how to proper implement the operating procedure. The idea may be first to have this in-person training and then launch APT. So in order to make sure that people are first trained a little bit more on quality control, on calibration, and then we can launch the PT. But this, of course, we can discuss later on. I see some hands up, so I will give the floor now to Rose Dango from Cameroon.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, GLOSOLAN, for this opportunity. Thank you, Christian, for a job well done. Really appreciate it. I just wanted to ask, is it the same trend for the other elements we determined for phosphorus, for nitrogen? Do we see the same kind of variability, the same coefficient of variation, the same trend in Africa as well? This is just to know. That's number one. And then number two, the way with the result, we see our result. I think this is a call for each one of us, lab managers, lab staff to, look at our procedures, look at the way we are doing business, look at the way we are doing analysis in the laboratory. I think it's a wake-up call for each lab to go through their procedure and you check it again, try to find out where the problems are coming from, where we are getting a different results, and work on. So I think it's at individual levels now first in the labs, because if you can get the results correct the one time, normally we should get it right the next time. So I think it's for us, as the different laboratories, from the lab heads to the technicians, for us to go through the procedures together. Each laboratory manager go through the procedure with the technician to be sure that we're doing things the right way. That was those were my two concerns or contributions. But my other concern was to know if we had the same kind of variability when it came to the different elements we analyzed. Christian?
I just had a quick look to the other elements because it takes time.
I know.
The process. And for phosphorus, in fact, this is one of the reasons we included phosphorus. The uncertainty is huge for all the regions. There is really a problem, I think, for all the regions. Even for carbon, as I told you, there is a problem in all regions. The uncertainty is 15%. And this is what was presented yesterday by Lucrecia. So you see the range, the difference in range. And so sometimes in some meeting, people say, but we should stop carbon white clay black and make Dumas only. Yes, but you know what is the cost of the instrument?
Yeah, it's expensive.
Exactly. So this is why we have to manage with this. Because you see, we know that the soil is the highest, the compartment that has the highest carbon content, 2 times more than in the atmosphere. And so sustainable management, increase in carbon content and so on, needs to have precise measurement. So you can say, use the best instrument. But this is, again, you must take into account the reality of the different continents and countries. So no, we must first focus on improving the carbon white clay black. And there is also issues about environment contamination and so on, and the people also. But this is where we have to focus and make an effort first, I think. And so as I mentioned, I think it should be possible to improve quite quickly, mainly because of the motivation, I think, of the laboratories in Africa.
Yes, and on another note, let me just throw this in, because we are also in my lab, we're also involved as a lab in the WEPAL program, this same kind of PT we WEPAL, we're paying money for it, and we do it we have it, we participate every 3 months on a quarterly basis. And it's, when you look at the results, I'm just throwing this in, we look at the results from that scheme as well, you see all of these discrepancies again. So, and that makes me ask, question myself, what is going on? Because even in that PT scheme as well, we get such massive deviations as well. I'm just throwing this in here, for us to really think about how to how to fix the problem. So even at that scale as well, we get such wide variations as well, which is not a good thing, but it is happening. And, it would be a good thing if we could really come up with the, how to fix it. Those were my contributions. Thank you.
But this is why we need the performing labs as well as the other labs, because it's only if performing labs can organize trainings in the lab and show to the people, and that the people can realize, this I should do in a different way. Or you see, this is one of the objectives of a GLOSOLAN, that the labs can help each other.
Yes. So, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Rose. Let's take the last 2 questions, because we're a little bit running late in the agenda. I know the item is very interesting, but we have other items interest at the same level to be discussed. So I will give now the floor to Joseph Uponi and then to Gabobwe. So now, Joseph, over to you.
Thank you very much. I don't want to repeat some of the things that my colleague Rose has already mentioned, but I want to emphasize the fact that this PT exercise is one of the greatest inputs from GLOSOLAN to the global discourse on carbon sequestration and climate change and stuff like that. Because if we don't have a common means by which we can measure measure carbon, how are we going to solve the problem? Now, it's even more significant to us in Africa, because if you talk of trying to conserve the forest and how we're able to bring some more carbon, the highest potentials for development are in Africa. That means we have a very high chance of trying to contribute very meaningfully to the issue of mitigating climate change, beginning from the little work we do in our laboratories. So I want us to be able to see this as a very important avenue for also getting sponsorship for the work of GLOSOLAN. It's a good point of argument. I take, for example, the issue of that Christian mentioned of making sure that whatever carbon results you present, you must specifically mention the method that you used. Without that one, there's no basis for any comparison. And it should just be a standard practice for every one of us that as we're giving our carbon results, we mention the method that we use for the carbon.
Yeah, I think this is extremely important.
And there's the importance of this other second, the third PT test that is focusing on Africa. Thank you so much for this. We all have a responsibility for trying to make sure that funding is available for this. We shouldn't wait for GLOSOLAN only and IRAD only to be pursuing this fund. It's in our mutual interest. If we have our governments or any other people that can help to raise a little fund for this, it's a good direction to go. That's my comment.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
For your
words. Indeed, this was really the idea behind this PT, and thanks a lot for remarking that. We give now the floor to the last two questions, and then we move forward. There's a question, it hands up from Gabo Bonwe Sejong. I hope I spell it well, sorry.
Thank you very much for the informative presentation. My suggestion is that since all of us here in Africa, we are having a problem with the results, you know, there's a huge uncertainties of the results. I suggest we could, since we've got regional blocks, we've got SADCAS, which is the Southern African Development Community Accreditation Services. We could liaise with SADC to help us in terms of the trainings, and since the PT is part of the requirement of the ISO 17025 standard, we could seek help from those regional blocks, the SADC, the ECOWAS, and the one in the North African region, just to improve, you know. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Mrs. Sejong, for your comment. Indeed, we should start seeking for support within the organization that are working within the region. So you mentioned ECOWAS, but also the African Union. There is a committee on agriculture. So we're trying to boost and strengthen the collaboration also with the African Soil Partnership to have. Of this means also the opportunity to have more fundings and have more projects. So we do our best to implement more activities and to foster more collaboration with other actors operating in the region. There is a, before giving the floor to Texture for his question, I saw there is a comment in the chat about how GLOSOLAN can also support on reagent quality, because without good reagent, good results is unexpected. This is a question that came from Abdulhamid Mohammed. And indeed, yeah, this is true, I agree, but we cannot ship reagents in different countries. They are very dangerous material. What we can do is to provide clear instruction on how to prepare them. And in the GLOSOLAN SOPs, so in the standard operating procedures published by the network, by GLOSOLAN, there are clear instruction on how reagents should be prepared and stored. And we are working on a document also to properly dispose these reagents. So we will try to support again and work more on that. But what we can do currently is just to support countries in preparing reagents, to give guidelines, but not really provide reagents, because it's really not really feasible to ship and support laboratories with reagents, because it's very strict. This material is strictly controlled in what regards the shipment and traveling. Okay, I see the hands up from Texture. So Texture, over to you.
Hello.
Yes. Oh wait, no, you're mute again. So can you unmute?
Hello.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, my apologies to the meeting. I've been running around and I've been having challenges with my laptop as well, with my computers as well. But it's a section that I wouldn't like to miss, proficiency testing, because that's the heart of everything. Actually, part of my running around was to try and link with about 3 other laboratories, because we have a very serious sample where a new company wants to blend new fertilizers, and we must have results that are sent to the overseas companies. So those results are needed like yesterday. This is why I was running around yesterday and today. So it's good news if our proficiency tests are back. That was my first point. I just wanted to hint that I know how hard Filippo and Keon and the whole team works. I don't underestimate how hard you work. But I wanted to say we could improve on our proficiency testing by reducing the turnaround time that we get the results. How we can do that, I don't know. But the second thing again, which is also dependent on the expenses and how we foot the expenses, is that we could benefit from proficiency testing more if we could have slightly larger volume of proficiency testing material. Because once we have the results, we can now go back to our methodologies, and with the few, say with the extra 10 grams, we play around with our methodologies, we play around with our SOPs, we sit down, the lab managers, the technicians, we sit down, and we also analyze where we went wrong. But at the moment, with the little sample that we have, it means we don't have a reference material except just internally generated reference material, which is not very good. So that's my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Texture. I know, Christian, if you want to answer to this.
Yeah, I will answer to this point that is coming on the table of a discussion. The PT samples are to mimic what the clients are doing. They send you a sample, you have to analyze it. And it helps you to make a diagnosis, but it's not a sample made for calibration of your instrument or improving the quality of your controls. These samples are extremely expensive. You see, it's not only producing the sample that is expensive, it's also the time we spend on it. So this was mentioned before, that WEPAL is also sending samples. Usually it has a high cost for the lab to participate. Here, the labs can join for free. And the rules are, you must analyze the samples as you analyze the samples of your clients. And if you diagnose a problem, each lab has to organize himself or itself to prepare controlled samples. And after this, internal quality control samples. And after this, to join what we discussed yesterday already, to PTs that can be organized between inside a country that has many labs, different countries, neighboring countries, or even a sub-region. And GLOSOLAN can support on a technical point of view. But as you know, GLOSOLAN has not the FAO budget. GLOSOLAN needs donors to support the actions. So let's say roughly, there is no budget. The samples that you have received were provided by different countries, prepared by the British Geological Surveys, and IAD, we have provided some fundings and working on the statistical analysis. FAO has sent the samples, and you have heard yesterday how difficult it was to send the samples, how many hours and days and weeks it took for the labs to receive the samples, discussing with the customs many times and so on. So you see, each of these samples, I think, is several thousands euro or dollars each. So this is really valuable. And this is all that we can do on a volunteer basis and with the small budget we have. And after this, what we expect is that each lab will do efforts and all the staff in the lab will do efforts to improve. And we are highly motivated to do that work in priority with Africa because we see the high motivation. But we can offer only what we have. And you see, these samples are very rare, difficult to obtain, and ask a lot of work. So the labs, we cannot provide more. And these samples anyway are not intended to do internal calibration or control. This is the responsibility of each lab and of the networks, national, regional, sub-regional, etc. So sorry to be a little bit strong in my words, but we have often these questions and we will support your lab if you want to prepare your internal quality controls. We discussed yesterday about organizing national or regional PTs. And okay, but I think I will stop now because time is running very fast. And if there are many other questions, you can send it. And also, Filippo, you must record the questions and we can answer more questions later. Or if there is still some question, I can answer now, but we can answer later. And
yeah, please, you know that we have, you can always contact me, or maybe Christian, if you want to write your email address here, if they have specific questions on the PT, or on the way the results will be processed, they may contact you as well.
As we discussed, everything related to the lab must remain confidential. So I prefer that you do contact me directly.
Okay.
I prefer you to contact Lucrecia and Filippo, so they make the things confidential. I do not know. I have only lab confidential number and IDs. I don't know which lab is which one. And I want to remain like, don't know who is behind the numbers. It must be, you see, just objective analysis. So contact Lucrecia and Filippo, they will send it to me.
Okay, sure. Sorry. So please, if you have questions on your performance, you always contact me, Lucrecia, and we will be provide Christian only the ID and not the name of the lab, because confidentiality is the key in this PT.
Yeah, exactly.
Before
Very
moving,
important.
Thanks a lot, Christian, actually, what you have done. And before moving forward, I see there is the chair of the African Soil Partnership with us. So Anne Muriuki would like to give her the floor for a brief comment. So,
all right,
Anne,
a very brief comment. Thank you so much for the proficiency tests. We've learned a lot. We were just wondering internally, I thought with my people here, could the great variability come out because you are comparing different instrumentation? For example, if you use an AS compared to another instrument that can measure the same, the results might be slightly different. So as probably we send these samples to the various labs, we should ask them what instruments they are using so that we are able to compare like instruments with like instruments, and maybe the variability may not be as much. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Yes, you are right, but this is what we said. Different methods, you generally cannot compare the results. But for each method, you have different procedures. And this is where the SOP from GLOSOLAN are so important, because ISO are behind expensive paywalls. Each ISO method is $150 euro at least. The GLOSOLAN methods are free, and they are very similar because it's the same people who participated in both committees, you see, and they take into account the needs of the different continents, laboratories, and so on, and they can be accessed at any moment. and we try to make the videos so that everybody follows the SOP and works with the same procedures. And what you mentioned is absolutely true. The methods must be the same, and after this, the procedures must be the same. But this is why it will be so important to have lab trainings, lab visit, and discussion among you, because you know the reality, and some labs have to face the same problem of chemicals and can perhaps have better results. So this means it's not only the chemicals. Chemical can explain some part of the uncertainty, but not everything. And after this is the consensus between the different labs. As the result depends on the procedures, the lab must meet and decide, okay, the consensus will be this. We will do all the same, and there will always be an uncertainty, but we must try to reduce it, make it as small as possible. Thank you very much for your comments. And also, if you have a request about some questions or so on, we can perhaps make small trainings or some video discussions or some video explanations or whatever to make the things more clear about statistics or method. Do not hesitate to contact Filippo.
I would suggest, if possible, Christian, for you to keep an eye on the chat, because there are other questions coming also. I think Sadiq wrote something on the chat. So maybe we can continue making questions on the PT in French or in English, even in Portuguese. We have Julia translating, and maybe Christian, you can continue on the chat as much as we can. So please have a look. We should move forward now to the next item. I propose to have a switch in the agenda. To keep the discussion on the SOP harmonization later on, and now move directly to item 7, because we have a special guest speaker who I don't know how long can be with us today. So item 7 is on the interpretation of laboratory results and provision of recommendations to farmers. Why we want to discuss about this? Because you see, we discuss about the PT, we discuss about the quality of the data, but this is important because these data are used on the ground. The data that also Christian showed are coming from the laboratory. We can consider laboratories as factories where soil enters and numbers, data come out. These numbers, these data are used on the ground by farmers. So we would like to investigate a little bit more what is the relation between farmers and laboratories and the other way around. So to know also, we would like to listen from you, the participants of today's meeting, on what are the issues that you are facing with the farmers. So how often do they bring the samples to you? If you face issues with the sampling way they perform, and so on. So we have Mr. Cornelius Zemba from the Ministry of Agriculture of Zambia with us today to present his experience on the ground. But I think the moderator for this item is Mr. Sadiq Adams. So Sadiq, if you are with us, I would like to ask you to please support also with the moderation and the open discussion that will be given later on. I will now give the floor to Mr. Zemba, who I would like to thank for being with us today. So over to you. I think you have to unmute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Filippo. Thank you very much for the insightful contributions from all the participants. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cornelius Zemba from Zambia. I work for the Ministry of Agriculture. And as Filippo just mentioned, I'm going to be looking at the relationship between our laboratories here in Zambia, as well as the farmers. So we'll be looking at the Zambian case. So unlike the presentations before me that I've looked at the perspective from the labs, I'm going to give another perspective now, what the farmers think about soil testing and the services being provided by the labs. So just a brief background for you to appreciate my presentation. Zambia itself is based in Southern Africa, and it's a huge country, about 753,000 square kilometers. And most of this land is actually arable. So we have numerous small-scale farmers who actually make up 9% of the total population. And these are actually the farmers who grow most of the crops in Zambia. So we do have both small-scale as well as commercial farmers. But the small-scale farmers grow most of the crops in Zambia. but they are actually trained by a number of factors, which include poor soil fertility, as well as acidity. And what this does is that it actually reduces their production, as well as their productivity for the crops. For example, if you look at the staple crop, which is maize, or as most of you call it, corn, instead of producing the optimal production, the potential production of the corn is about 10 tons per hectare, but our farmers will only produce 2 tons per hectare, which is very low. And what this does is actually that it reduces their incomes. Now, the most limiting nutrients are, of course, nitrogen, like most of sub-Saharan Africa, and phosphorus. And because of the acidity, you find that most of the nutrients get fixed. Now, how do the farmers use this soil data on the ground? Firstly, I would like to mention that as a Ministry of Agriculture, we have provided, through our research department, blanket recommendations to the whole country of how much fertilizer our farmers need to use. So because of this, you find that farmers largely actually depend on these blanket recommendations. For instance, like I was talking about maize, all our farmers know that for you to grow maize, you need 4 bags of basil dressing and 4 bags of top dressing, and they know when this has to be applied. And this is the only information they rely on. However, for the commercial farmers themselves, for them, because they're highly technical, they use soil data to calculate soil nutrient requirements, lime requirements themselves, and of course, soil water requirements. They are highly technical, and because they grow on a very large scale, they don't want to misuse any resources. However, most small-scale farmers, on the other hand, they hardly use this data. They would rather use the blanket recommendations, like I already alluded to earlier. Now, do they have issues in sampling? For the commercial farmers, for them, they're able to pay for these services because they have the capacity to pay. And you find that most of them will want to analyze their soils every production cycle. For small-scale farmers, on the other hand, they lack the tools to collect soil samples. For example, even just simple augers, our farmers may not have that. And so it presents problems for them to collect proper samples in the field. If they have to collect, they probably want to use a handheld hoy, which may not do a good job. It won't go to the depth that's required, the plow layer. Now, typically, you find that actually most of our small-scale farmers have very little knowledge and interest in sampling their soils or having them tested for issues that I'll highlight later on. Now, the reasons for testing, for our commercial farmers, for them, they don't want to lose any kwacha. So they want to maximize and get value for their money. For small-scale farmers, for most of them, their major interest is just to test for soil pH, because our extension agents in the Ministry of Agriculture, who they actually largely depend on, the government extension services, have informed them that when your pH is too low, your nutrients will be fixed. So that's where their only interest comes in, and not per se to determine how much N or how much P is in the soil, and also how much they may need to apply. Yeah. And now the capacity of our labs in Zambia. Sadly, we just have 2 reliable labs in the whole country. Remember, I mentioned the background of Zambia, a very huge country with 10 provinces, but we only have 2 reliable labs in the whole country. Already, you can tell this presents a problem. And then all these labs, the 2 labs, they're actually based within the same city, in Lusaka, in the capital city. So meaning the rest of the country is unlabbed. They have no labs to go to. The labs that may be there in the other provincial centers, I think we have probably 4 of them in provincial centers. They do exist, but they provide very limited services. For example, they may only test for soil pH. But then again, if you look at the entire geographical area of the province, it's really massive, such that just having 1 lab may not do for the rest of the farmers. Now, the challenges that our farmers face with regards to accessing laboratory services in the country. Number one, trust. And for this one, this mostly affects the commercial farmers. They do not trust even the 2 labs that we have. So you find that they actually opt to take their samples to South Africa, which is really bad. So probably the reliability of the results is not really trusted by them, and they would rather pay more to export their soil samples very far away from here. And of course, the limited network of laboratories, like I already mentioned, we just have 2 in the country, which are also based within the capital city. Now, with these same 2 labs, you find that testing one soil sample will cost not less than $40, which is already a barrier for the small-scale farmers. You can imagine they are now debating whether to test this soil sample or actually buy a bag of fertilizer. So they will obviously go for the fertilizer because also the culture doesn't really permit them. The culture has never been so much about testing. Farmers have never really seen the value of soil testing. And so partly the extension agents themselves that we have may also be part of the problem because they also may not be very able to interpret results that may come from a lab. And so we have a few recommendations here. And I'm glad to be part of this panel, talking to people who work in the labs. Number one, we need to build confidence in our local laboratories so that even the commercial farmers themselves can begin to use our labs. And probably when they begin to use them, the farmers dotted around the commercial farmers, they will also see value and begin to develop the culture of soil testing. So we need great calibration services for our equipment so that trust can be built. And secondly, we would propose to introduce mobile testing kits. This would make it easier for a start because obviously setting up a lab may be very expensive, but mobile testing kits may help in the interim to reduce or clear some of these bottlenecks that exist to small-scale farmers accessing these very important services. And with these same kits, we could also include scanning technology to reduce on the costs because, you know, for our labs that use dry chemistry to test for all the samples, probably because of the number of chemicals or reagents they have to use, this increases the cost. Scanning may help. And finally, we would propose massive sensitization and trainings for both our farmers as well as our extension agents so that both teams can appreciate the value that exists in soil testing, but also in ensuring that our extension agents can well interpret the results that come from the labs and provide proper extension services to our farmers. I thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cornelius, for this presentation.
Thank you.
We now give the floor to anyone who would like to ask questions. Any question from any participant?
I see there is an end up. Thanks a lot, Cornelius, for the presentation, by the way. I think it was really comprehensive, really covering this bridge that we would like to fill between labs and farmers. So Sadiq, I think there are some hands up. Maybe you can start giving the floor to them. Maybe Sadiq?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No hands is up.
My hand is up.
Yeah, Mr. Puni?
Yeah.
The floor is for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It shows the clear indication that no group actually works in isolation.
Yeah.
You know, no matter how accurate our analysis may be in the lab, if the services are not required by the people who need them, then we become irrelevant. So
True.
there has to be this close collaboration between the lab people and the extension agents to make us a bit more relevant. I think, especially in Africa, most of our testing labs are more associated with research units, research in the university, research in the research institutes, so that the aspect of actually rendering service to the resource poor farmers is not very well developed, except in places like South Africa and Kenya. In most of the other African countries, they are just beginning to pick up. Now, considering the issue of the costs of analysis, just the sheer cost of routine analysis, you know that the resource poor farmer cannot really afford those things. And that's why the issue of the spectral technology is becoming more relevant, because it can provide analysis at a lower cost to the resource poor farmer and begin to make them generate interest in testing the soil. We don't really have an option but to test the soil, because we are causing a lot of damage by just applying fertilizers without soil tests. We know that already. So in Nigeria, for instance, the government has become much more aware of that, and they have set up 4 regional spectral labs. But they are not immediately providing services to the resource poor farmers because of the calibration studies that need to be done. So they're actually using those 4 reference laboratories and a few other laboratories in the country to carry out a national survey to get a database that will make it possible for the spectral analysis to be relevant to the needs of the farmers. As at now, just using the spectral analysis to make recommendations to the farmers may be a bit faulty because of that lack of calibration. So we still have a long way to go in this area. While we are trying to balance with the old technology and make adjustment to the new technology, those of us who are working in the labs now have a little marketing to do to let the local farmers know the importance of soil testing before applying fertilizers, lest we end up with a bigger damage for the future generations. So thank you very much for the presentation that you have made. It just highlights the similar problems that most of the African nations have, apart from probably, like I said, Kenya and South Africa. We can learn a bit from those countries and be able to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Opuni.
I think there is an hand up from Mustafa, but I think he lost the connection. So in the meantime, there is someone else. I think Texture, you have the hand up as well.
Hello?
Hello, Texture, the floor is for you.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. I can hear you.
All right. Thank you.
Right.
I want to, first of all, thank the presenter, Mr. Zemba. He has been thorough, actually. He has done his very good presentation, and that's very thorough. And I agree with most of his findings, and this is also affecting countries like Zimbabwe. For example, we have so many farmers, again, taking their samples, I know, to South Africa for analysis. So it is a bitter pill for us to swallow, but I think there is a reason for every action that is someone or individual or farm managers perform. So it means there is something that is not readily available, or something that is missing from our table, that people are crossing to South Africa to send their soils for analysis. And I'm aware that most farmers, again, from Mozambique, are sending samples to South Africa. So I think it's part of our homework. Let's be, as a region, let's do our homework and find out why. But Among the challenges that were alluded to by Mr. Zemba, there is also lack of trust from the old farmers or the old class. People normally like to believe that there is no reason for basic soil analysis. They keep on growing crops, getting 2 tons per hectare, where others are now getting 15 tons per hectare, or 10 is the average, but people continue getting 2 tons per hectare and things like that. So we have a problem, definitely. So let's try to arrange this one. I know that things like mobile texting kits can also go a long way in demonstrating to farmers the importance of having soil tested. Only 2 months ago, in August, I met one of our traditional leaders, that's Chief Seke, and I talked to him at length, and he ended up, calling me professor. I said, no, I'm not a professor, but he said, no, when I call you a professor, I know soil analysis, and I see that you are above the average man. So you have advertised that you want to set up a regional testing laboratory within Seke area, and you are offering to give discount to farmers. I wanted just to conscientize farmers the importance of having soils tested. In that area, we have sandy soils, and things like just zinc makes a big difference, from non-zincated fertilizers. So when I put up my draft, and I also put up that GLOSOLAN picture, soil testing with people on the, I think you still remember that nice picture of GLOSOLAN. And he also appreciated the importance of having such organization. And he even offered me up to, he said he can offer me up to 3 to 4 hectares, which will act as an area for demonstrating farmers the importance of having nutrients by having fields within that area where we can have plants that are treated, maybe maize, maybe potatoes, nutrients catered for, the importance of liming, because even when the soils are very low, farmers don't appreciate the importance of having lime in there. They prefer to put fertilizers. So such challenges, we must actually convince our farmers. And another point that was raised in passing, which also Dr. Oponi alluded to, is the one that I wanted to point out on scanning technology. How practical is scanning technology, in relation to the applicability of nutrient uptake and nutrient release? Because a scan can show that you have phosphate, as P, but does it show that P is now needed to be taken as P2O5, or the orthophosphate? So while some scanning techniques can work, they might not release or give insight to the real availability of nutrients. So we must actually try to demonstrate to farmers, and I meant to sit down with our GLOSOLAN and our NASOLAN, and to try to take momentum such as this, so that we have farmers, we demonstrate to them, and we have even potted plants like the ones that we used to take to the Harare Agricultural Show, which shows nutrient deficiencies and the importance of putting, various treatments, minus nutrient, minus potassium, minus zinc, minus iron, and things like that. So farmers know now visual impact of this. So that's my contribution. I know I've said a lot in just in brackets, but that's I am well aware of and the importance of what Mr. Zemba went through. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Texio, for this lengthy contribution.
Thank you.
Now, you are now called Professor.
He's done.
Yes.
I think there is the last hand up from Tembinkosi, because we are a little bit late on the agenda, Sadiq. So let's take the last question from Tembinkosi. And if Mustafa is back, we can listen from him. Otherwise, move forward.
Mustafa.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. I want also to contribute to his embassy presentation. We have challenges as well. You know, these days we have quite a large number of people resorting to urban agriculture. Normally, this group of farmers, they don't bother much to consult labs in terms of soil quality and the soil health. They just do their farming. They apply fertilizers without any recommendations. Then we as labs in Africa, we have problems with the nature. Nature is working against us. You do fertilizer recommendations for small-scale farmers, and most of our farmers, small-scale farmers, are in the countryside where rains are very erratic. So after doing fertilizer recommendations, they apply fertilizer, then there is no rain, enough rain. You know what happens when you do fertilizer application and there's the inadequate rainfall. Their fields produce very little, if not at all. Then the farmers become very angry against the labs to say you recommended the application of fertilizers and now our fields are devastated. So I think when we do fertilizer recommendations, there's a need also to educate farmers on how to do a holistic farming in terms of maintaining soil health, also to understand the issues to do with the water. So unfortunately, we suffer from droughts in Africa. As a result, our labs found it to be not in good use because of other things that are affecting crop production in the fields. So farmers, they resorted to, in some areas, for instance, in Matabeleland North in Zimbabwe, farmers resorted to opening new virgin land for cropping, leaving out unproductive land. So as a result, we destroy natural resources from time to time. What we are farming becomes unproductive. Next, we move on to a virgin land. We clear trees and do farming, and that land becomes unproductive. We move on to the next without actually maintaining the same portion of land while maintaining good soil health for better crop production. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mustafa, for this contribution.
Mustafa, I think he's back, because I know Mustafa used to have a question. I don't know if he's with us or he can write in the chat, because we should move forward to the item on the SOP, Sadiq. So maybe we close here the discussion. We can still invite participants to the chat. Maybe they can use the chat to raise more questions to Mr. Zemba or to share other comments on this. I would like to thank a lot Dr. Zemba for his participation and very nice presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sadiq. And now we move forward and give the floor to my colleague Lucrezia to cover the item on the harmonization of the SOPs.
Many thanks, Filippo. I will try to be brief with the presentation because we are short on time. So now we are opening the item on the standard operating procedures, which means that we will shortly discuss about what SOPs Afrilab would like to propose GLOSOLAN to harmonize, and what other SOPs Afrilab would like to harmonize at the regional level. This is something new in GLOSOLAN, because starting from this year, we are giving the opportunity to regions to move independently on the harmonization of standard operating procedures, given that most of the standard operating procedures widely used worldwide has already been harmonized. So in order to open the discussion, I would like briefly to recall how our SOPs are harmonized. So remember that standard operating procedure by GLOSOLAN refer to globally harmonized methods to ensure the replicability of a measurement and the credibility and traceability of data. All our SOPs are available online for free and are basically step-by-step instructions that include also sections on health and safety, quality assurance and quality control, and in some cases also sampling guidelines. How do we harmonize the SOP? What is the process? Well, first of all, we need to decide what SOPs to harmonize in terms of parameter and methods. And in this regard, the regional soil laboratory network have a say on this through, at an example, this meeting. So at the annual regional soil laboratory network meetings, the SOPs that are perceived as needed by the regions are discussed and therefore brought to the attention of GLOSOLAN. These are not the only recommendation we bring to GLOSOLAN in terms of SOPs. Indeed, the final decision on what SOPs to harmonize at the global level are the results of the brainstorming from the regions, of course, but also keeping an eye on global priorities. That's why when we started to harmonize SOPs in GLOSOLAN, we gave priority to SOPs on carbon. And also it keeps into consideration global soil partnership requests, coming from, as example, other technical networks. Once there is an agreement on the standard operating procedures to harmonize, a working group and a review panel are established. What is common to these groups is the presence of a global leader that is also the main author of the SOP. So the global leader is really the connection person between the working group and the review panel. Both the review panel and the working group are composed by experts on the topic. So the experts in there should really be experts on a specific method. And their task is basically that of drafting, so writing the standard operating procedure in the case of the working group, and reviewing and endorsing the SOP in the case of the review panel. So let's start from the beginning. So from the work of the working group, the first thing that the working group is tasked to do is to develop what we call harmonization matrix. This is basically the Excel document that you should have all received somehow at some point in your membership in GLOSOLAN. It's specific, SOP specific, so there is one harmonization matrix per each SOP. And indeed, like GLOSOLAN members are asked to complete this harmonization matrix if they use the method at hand. This matrix basically, as I said, it's an Excel file reporting all steps of the procedures that can lead to measure differences in the results. So we look at all aspects that can lead to these differences, starting from the sample preparation to quality assurance and quality control, but also to the interpretation of the results or the analysis. So once this matrix is prepared, as I said, it's sent to GLOSOLAN members for completion. Only members that use that specific method are asked to complete the matrix, because we want to know about the procedures that they use on that method. Therefore, laboratory complete the Excel, send them back to the GLOSOLAN coordinators, so Filippo and myself, that make all information anonymous. This is critical for us because we want to ensure the objective analysis of the feedback received from the laboratories. So the anonymous information from all regions are sent to the working group. The regional leaders from in the working group analyze the information provided by laboratories in their region. We consider these also very important to keep into consideration regional differences and also to have a critical look at the information provided by the different regions, because we suppose that regional experts know about their region. Therefore, the regionally harmonized matrices are put together in what we call the global harmonized matrix. And this is the matrix that we ultimately use for drafting the standard operating procedure. So ultimately, the matrix translated into text, there is a template for writing a GLOSOLAN standard operating procedure, and this is the template that the working group use. And once the working group is happy with the text of the SOP, this is sent to the review panel for final review and endorsement. Starting from last year, the review of the GLOSOLAN SOP is not done only by the review panel, but it's also done by the GLOSOLAN Technical Committee that I remind you is a body established by GLOSOLAN last year, together with the GLOSOLAN Steering Committee. And it's also reviewed, depending on the topic, by experts from other GSP technical networks, like the one on salt-affected soils, the one on pollution, the one on biodiversity, and so on. Once all these groups are happy with the text of the SOP, this is finally published on the GLOSOLAN website and translated in different languages, depending on the availability of translators and the request for countries on having translated SOPs. On this screen, you see that we don't only publish the text of the SOP, but we also try to involve laboratories that are very confident with a specific method on the production of training videos on the implementation of the SOPs that we harmonize and published. When we publish the SOP, we also care of informing laboratories on the risk associated to the use of a specific method. So we publish on the GLOSOLAN website also the information you see on screen, the environmental risk and the risk for human health related to the implementation of a specific method. And these also serve us to guide the laboratory somehow towards the use of more sustainable methods. Other information that you can find on the webpage in relation to the different SOPs are the level of technologies required to implement a given method, the average duration of the analysis, and the global median price of the analysis. So in summary, this is the process that we use to harmonize SOPs. So as I said, first of all, we decide the parameter and the method to harmonize. We establish the working group that develop the harmonization matrix. The matrix is shared with laboratories worldwide, and therefore information are collected on regional basis so that we have regional harmonized matrices. Once we have the regional harmonized matrices, we prepare the global harmonized matrix that is transformed into text by the working group. And once the working group is happy with the document, this is sent to the review panel for review and endorsement, but also to the other groups that I just mentioned. And therefore we proceed with the publication. However, there are special cases. Over the years, we noticed that this process is not really working for some methods, maybe because there are few experts on the topic. This is, for example, the case of the SOPs on biological parameters. So there are either few experts on the topic in general, or few experts on the topic that feel like engaging in writing the GLOSOLAN SOPs. Or otherwise, we notice that the method is very much needed, and this is also why it's very much needed, because there are few laboratories that perform the procedure or do the specific analysis. So overall, these two limitations to the, or challenges to the harmonization process slow it down considerably, so that we had to think about a solution to this. So what we decided to do? Well, basically, we decided to still establish a kind of working group involving experts from other technical networks. This still will prepare an harmonization matrix, but this will not be sent to laboratories. It's more to guide the discussion internally to the working group, so that experts agree on the way forward and draft or write the SOP accordingly. So basically, the work in this case is kind of centralized. We don't really rely much on the feedback of the laboratories. We eventually ask them for a confirmation over the work of the working group. And this is how these special SOPs are harmonized. This is just to remind you that in the SOPs, we also pay attention to health and safety, from the also including sample collection and sample storage. This is an overview of the SOPs that GLOSOLAN harmonized over the years. And if you like, I suggest you to take a picture or a screenshot of this, because this will help you with the discussion that is just upcoming. So in 2019, we released the first SOPs that were mostly on, or actually all on chemical parameters. The same applied to the year 2020, and starting from last year, we started to release also SOPs on soil physical and biological parameters. And as you can see, the number of SOPs we harmonized over the years, it's quite large. It's about 40. We are talking about 40 SOPs, which is a considerable number. So I would like to thank all of you that contributed to this effort. And now I would like to open the discussion to ask you what SOPs in terms of chemical, physical, and biological parameters you would like GLOSOLAN or Afrilab to harmonize. This is the fourth RESOLAN meeting we are organizing this year. The meeting of the networks for Asia, Europe and Eurasia, and the Near East and North Africa already took place. So what you see on screen are the recommendations in terms of SOPs that GLOSOLAN or the regional network should harmonize. This can also help you and guide you through the discussion. If you want to take a picture also of this slide. And now I would like to open the floor. So the question is, what SOPs in terms of chemical, physical, and biological parameters you would like GLOSOLAN or Afrilab to harmonize? I will change from presentation mode to editing mode. I don't remember. Let me see the agenda. Who is supposed to help me with the moderation? Texture, can you help me, please, with the moderation of the discussion for this item? I see you, but I cannot hear you.
Hello?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Oh, okay, right. that's all right. But I want to thank you for, because I looked at how to tackle this important topic. The way that you have presented it is just excellent, and you have all the data, but I mean, I can here and there help you as well. I think we might want to find input from, as you have challenged from the floor, the requests for chemical, physical, biological analysis, I think for the SOPs, I think that's a good approach. Let's see.
So I see now Anna has their hands up.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lucretia. It's possible to show again the slide number 13. Maybe we can start to show what we, yeah. Maybe we start by that, and if we are agree to do same thing or not. What do you think?
Sorry, come again on that one. I missed it.
Yeah, just to show this slide, and maybe we can discuss if we are agree to propose same thing or not.
All right.
Thank you.
Maybe starting from the simple ones. Well, for example, biological parameters, like biological and physical parameters usually take like less time to discuss than chemical ones. So looking at the biological parameters, they were basically all regions proposed to work on DNA extraction. And then there was a request from Nina on earthworm sampling and identification.
Mm-hmm.
I can also do like this if you like. So you have them all grouped. Maybe you cannot see.
All right.
And there was one more.
Hello, Karen? Hello?
Yes?
Yeah, just to say, you know, I don't know what the flow thinks, because I don't know the applicability of DNA for biological analysis in Afrilab. We would like to support you, of course, if it is GLOSOLAN or the other labs that have requested that one, that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, I know I've done a lot on the earthworms and things like that, you know, a long way back. So yeah. I think that one is very applicable.
So DNA extraction was asked by all regions. But if you don't see, either because they would like to start doing it or because they already do it. But if you don't feel it as needed in Africa or doable, we can remove it. Shall I remove it?
I think you can remove it for.
Yeah, let's take it out.
Yes, take it out.
Okay, what about earthworm sampling and identification? This should be feasible, no?
It should be feasible. And this one is directly related to soil fertility. So it's definitely a very important parameter as well, which is often ignored, yes.
Yeah, so let's keep it. And would you like to look into some other biological parameters? Or are you happy with only earthworm sampling and identification? Christian, please.
I have a comment or a question, because in this case, it means that the people will also be involved, if I understood correctly, your presentation. Because, for example, DNA, I don't think it's useless, it's necessary, but it does not mean that people from that network have to be involved. And the same for earthworms. In fact, if people want to be involved, the question is not, is it necessary or not, is, are there people available to join a working group on this? Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, but the people in the working group should be people with experience on the method. So if the method is not used in Africa, they will not be representative. By the way, at the GLOSOLAN meeting, we will bring all these proposals from the region to the attention of GLOSOLAN, of course, and we will identify what methods to harmonize at the global level and which ones will be harmonized at the regional level. So, for example, if in Africa they use I don't know, a specific method to analyze a specific parameter, like it happened last year. Now Africa is harmonizing an SOP. Let me remember, it was on nitrogen maybe. Filippo, you remember what one was? The one that Africa is harmonizing, I think KCl, what is it? Acidity. Filippo, you remember?
Yeah, but what I mean here, the people can say they are interested in, for example, for earthworms, even if there is no real specialist in among this group, but they think it's useful for the farmers or the environment or whatever. Because for me, I think it's important to have a knowledge of that kind of biodiversity, even if the people are not working on it at the moment. But it's important for them to be able to use in the region in the future a method that has been harmonized with other regions. It was just a comment.
No, indeed. Also, we are trying to introduce new methods, no, in the region. Also, maybe more sustainable or like methods that inquire on parameters that are not under analysis in the region at present. So, if Africa feels the need to analyze DNA for biological parameters, then we can add it as a recommendation. And then if there are experts that can contribute to the harmonization process, good. Otherwise, other regions will take the lead.
Yeah, I was especially mentioning this about the earthworms and the physical method about measuring soil bulk density, because I think both at the cylinder method, because both are a little bit interconnected. So, but it was just a comment after this. People have to decide what they are interested in or what they would like to work on. So thank you for letting me speak about this.
So shall I reintroduce DNA extraction?
No, it's not at all what I said. But I think for earthworms, I think it's very important, even if among this group, because there are approximately 40 people in the meeting, even if nobody works about it at the moment and they cannot join a working group, but they think it's important. This is what I have understood from one comment. We can just say that there is an interest from Afrilab, but there is a SOP on this, even if the people among that group are not directly interested or have time to work on it or skills to work on it. Because what I see is that, in fact, I'm speaking more about physical and interest in physical and the aggregate stability, as well as the cylinder method, bulk density measuring by cylinder method is very much connected to the macrofauna activity. And so this is why it can be interesting to use in the future that method in Africa, even if the people are not working it or using it at the moment. Because in the assessment of sustainable management, the bulk density is one of the 4 parameters that was put forward by the Global Soil Partnership. So this is why the bulk density is very much connected with the macrofauna activity. This is what I said.
Yeah, sorry to interject. What Christian is saying is correct. Like here at the University of Zimbabwe, with the specialist who was doing gene extraction on soil microbes some years back. Unfortunately, when he left, no one continued with the work. We have got the instrument. We don't know whether the equipment is working or not. And also, there's so much interest in gene extraction in microbiology by the biological sciences. So I think if we the method can be harmonized. Some in the future we can actually use it. You know, the globe is now becoming just a village.
Mm-hmm. So let's keep earthworm sampling and identification under biological. And I don't see any other suggestion. Also in the chat, you can use the chat as to make suggestions. Anan.
Yeah, it's a question if the CO2 emission, it was already, we already did it last year or not for biological analysis?
No, we just did soil respiration.
Yeah, soil respiration. So I think it's the same.
Yeah.
Depending. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So
hello?
Yes.
Yes, I just meant to bring this one in. I've just been reminded by Tembi on microbiological analysis. There's somebody who asked me, he said, if you were analyzing rhizobia by 1985, Mr. Tendai, you are now telling me you are no longer analyzing rhizobia in Zimbabwe. I said, no, that time I was working for research and specialist services. So we were doing, rhizobia. Indeed, when I came to the University of Zimbabwe, for years we were doing rhizobia, analysis as well, with the late Professor Mpepereke, who became renowned for his expertise in. But I think some of these things we must pick up. The only reason why I did not pick DNA is, is that no one appears to be actually to give volunteer information. We benefit indeed with the information when the soap is given out. It affects all of us. We accept it as soon as it is harmonized globally, we accept it. But to be a working group of DNA when we do not have now such a equipment and expertise. But I was just thinking that something like rhizobia, because rhizobia is very important in the biological nitrogen fixation of things like soybean and things like that. So it's probably we might want to look at it from the biological analysis that is required.
So that you suggest to add the rhizobium.
Yes, I've suggested rhizobia. Yes, rhizobium. Yes.
Do you know the method or?
Yes.
What method? I don't know if it's written like this in English.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just a type of trying to classify the rhizobia and the effect on biological nitrogen fixation. So it is just by microscope determination.
So can I write rhizobia classification?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And there is a comment in the chat from Botswana that they likely do DNA extraction.
Oh, good.
So they suggest to include it.
Mm.
Maybe I include it, and then when we establish the working group, well, if there are no volunteers, then other regions will take care of it. Extraction. There are other comments in the chat. DNA, I think, is more on the identification or characterization of the microbes in line with the biological analysis. I'm not sure if that's what we want to do. I only know that much of the interest is on the microbial biomass activity in the soil. But if there are other purposes, then it's fine.
Okay.
Well, let's leave it there. We are receiving other suggestions maybe we can close biological parameters and look into physical ones now. There was a suggestion, well, Anand, maybe you can explain it. KSAT.
Yeah, it's for hydraulic conductivity in the lab. So it can be by the saturate way. And I think we can do it without sophisticated equipment. So I don't know if other labs in Africa do that. And I have some question for PAIO method for particle size distribution and laser granulometry. That it can depending if the labs have this equipment or not.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed, these are methods that require quite often advanced equipment. Maybe let's start from the beginning. What do you think about the field capacity by cylinder method? Do you support its harmonization or not?
Sorry. Field
capacity by cylinder method. Yes or no?
I think field capacity is important, but whether it's applied by cylinder method or not, I think if we just call it field capacity, then probably we might want to capture what others are doing, what method others are doing for the field capacity. Maybe by pressure plates extraction.
Yeah, but last year they proposed that. So it's something we proposed it last year about field capacity by extraction, pressure extraction. I think the previous year it was in 2022 or 21. I don't know if there are already working group about it or not. It was in 2022, I think.
Does anyone know whether this was done or not? Because that could be a good starting point. Because normally field capacity goes with a permanent routing point. Those two actually they give an insight to the water holding capacity of the soil and the important other parameters, physical parameters. Does anyone know whether this was done in 2022? Because I haven't seen it actually on the field capacity.
This is what was proposed last year.
Okay.
But I agree with you, Texture, about I'm not agree to do it by to harmonize for that by cylinder, because this way it's using all the time by biological how to tell that people who work in biology, they do that because it's easy and quick, but for me it's not a way to measure the retention water on the soil. So do it by cylinder. I'm not sure to encourage people to do this method. So I prefer if we can work like last year, they proposed to do it by extraction. It means by Richard's plate or by sandbox. By do it by cylinder, I'm not sure if we have to encourage this kind of method. I'm not. What do you think, Kristen? Maybe you can add something about it because you know this method too.
Yes, I know that one. Yes, it's very relevant as well.
It's not a method who physical research use it. It's almost the time it's people who work in biology and did it, but it's not very good method for physical or for people who work in physics.
Yeah, I agree with you, Anand. But as there will be some aspects related to biological activity, perhaps these people will be interested to do it. I don't know. And it can be interesting to see if it's possible to have an harmonization. If people really work on it. This is my concern. I'm not sure so many people are working on it, are using it.
It's water retention, Lucretia. It's right in PF, water retention. It's same. Water retention curve, it's same method.
Good afternoon, everyone. With us, the standoff from South Africa, we actually use water retention method to actually get the field capacity.
Ma noi l'abbiamo fatta da cosa? Quindi abbiamo già fatto by sandbox or ceramic plates.
Lucretia, en fait.
Oh, so sorry, I was unmuted. I was just consulting with Filippo, that he is actually the guru of SOPs in GLOSOLAN. No? He's working with all the working groups. So he was indeed telling me that these methods, we already did it.
Yeah, it's the same.
Water retention.
It's just one point inside the water retention curve. So water retention curve, it's a lot of points, and field capacity is just points inside this curve. So the real name of the method is water retention.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already in 2022, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Aggregate stability. What do you think about this one?
I think that's a very important parameter for soil physical determinations. Yes. I think that one is it's one of the most actually important, aggregate stability.
There is consensus. Shall we also propose it?
Yes, I think we needed that parameter.
Sorry if I intervene, but I would like also to specify which method you are interested to, because remember last year we Afrilab also proposed, I think it was Le Bassionnet. I don't remember how. I think, are we referring to this one so we can specify it?
I think aggregate stability normally. What I know about is the wet sieving method. I think determination by the wet sieving method is one of the most fundamental analysis for aggregate stability.
Anan, do you confirm that, because I remember we discussed already a little bit about this, do you confirm you want to use this, you are familiar also with this wet sieving method or more with Le Bassionnet? Because I think maybe there are different methods in the region.
Yeah.
We can do both. I don't know. They're very different each other.
Almost the time we use Le Bassionnet method, so for aggregate stability, and I think it's dependent. Some people call it too wet method, wet sieving, and I'm not sure if it's the same or not. And it's dependent. There are different methods, but the famous one is Le Bassionnet, but I'm not sure if the same what texture tell us wet sieving, because in Bassionnet method we have wet sieving too.
Yeah. Okay. In fact, I think it would be good to have a working group to answer your question, Filippo, because I'm not a specialist of this, and I think Le Bassionnet is a little bit more sophisticated, having different pre-treatments, when the wet sieving is more simple. And it would be interesting to have people who are used with this, because two methods can be good in different environment or depending on what you are looking for.
Yeah,
but,
this was.
But we should have expert. Lucretia mentioned that this discussion must be made by expert, and in my case, I'm not an expert in this method, and it would be good
we will further discuss this within the working group. I was just wondering if you already have an idea. But yes, I'm seeing in the chat also most people are also pushing for the wet sieving. But as we did, for instance, for the particle size distribution, we may harmonize two different methods for the same parameters. So this is something that the working group will discuss and decide eventually. Okay.
Maybe yes. We can add Le Bassionnet. It was already suggested last year, I think. So other methods, because it's dependent of kind of soil. And for Le Bassionnet, maybe I don't remember if Bassionnet we use ethanol, alcohol, and water too. And for wet 7, I think we just using water. I'm not sure. Maybe we can let it and
yeah, we can list both of them, and then the working group will discuss about this. So maybe you can put between the brackets both wet sieving and Libissone. I can really ask Anna or Christian to write in the chat Libissone, so we are sure to spell it correctly.
Yeah, wet sieving is just, involves water and, the set of sieves that you put and you are looking at the particle, the aggregates breaking down or not, as you sieve in a shaker, because you are going in a water bath and up and down. But I think it is a very important analysis, because it looks at soil management sustainability, because it looks at erosion and things like that, how we can control erosion. So the aggregate stability is a key factor in controlling erosion. So it promotes the aggregate formation by the use of extra or out of resource, things like manure and things like that, to form those aggregates, soil aggregates. And so I think it's a good starting point to promote sustainable management of soils.
Just precision. So wet 7 in the Bissonnet 2 is wet 7. It's dependent of countries. Some people talk just about wet 7, and in countries who speak French tell it's Bissonnet method. So the Bissonnet method is wet 7 too, and maybe there are other methods, I'm not sure, or different ways. It's depending of kind of soil. Just because I read some comments, so it's wet 7 too, the Bissonnet method.
Yeah, in fact, I would like just to make a comment, because you see there is sometimes confusion between method, procedures, and here it is a test, in fact, because the result will totally depend from the procedure. And the benefit for me for GLOSOLAN is to propose a procedure that is applicable, technically feasible and applicable in many countries, because it has been discussed for consensus, and that the people can refer to. Because very often you see they say Libissone method, in fact it's not a method, it's a procedure, and it's just like for Welken Black and other method. In fact, everybody is doing what he wants in his lab and just call it how he wants. So the benefit referring to a GLOSOLAN method is, okay, you know what I have done exactly this, and the results will be comparable. So in this case, it's a test. And of course, different people can make different tests. And it would be good that GLOSOLAN propose a standard way of doing this aggregate stability test, referring to wet sieving made by, I think, Kemper and Rosno, as far as I can remember, in the 80s. And after this, Le Bissonnet improved it. And this is from the 90s, I think. And many papers nowadays refer to Le Bissonnet method. So that this makes the result more comparable. But it's good. I think this is one of the benefits of FAO and GSP, to have experts working on this and say, okay, now when we speak about structural stability for GSP, it's that procedure.
So I think we have an agreement, no, on aggregate stability. What about laser granulometry and PARIO? My understanding is the equipment is too advanced, so that many labs do not have it. What do you think?
It's not so much the method that is advanced, because yeah, it needs high quality equipment and environment. You see, air conditioned lab, good electricity and so on. But the problem is still research method. It's not possible for the moment to make a link between the result of this method with a granulometer, and very few labs have this. So for the moment, it's a research method, but if some labs in Africa are using it and are interested to join a working group, I think the people must just keep it on the list, but it's still research, not routine method.
Okay,
Lucre.
now let's, Mariam, please.
No. Lucre is mute.
Yes, because she has another commitment to the GSP, so I will continue the moderation. We have to discuss the section on chemical parameters. So let me reopen the slide, just a second. Sorry, just a second, we have to make a change.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. We have the ITPS meeting running in parallel, and since we are late with the Afrilab meeting, I have to rush because there are 2 items that require my presence. So I'm very sorry, but I leave you with Filippo, and thank you so much for being with us today. And I see you very soon. Sorry again. So sorry.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Lucrecia.
Okay, just a second, sorry. Okay, I think you see the presentation. Can you confirm, please? Yeah. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So
Yes.
let's go back here. We have to talk about the chemical parameters. I'm trying to have a look at the chat.
We didn't finish about,
sorry.
About physical parameters.
Okay, sorry. Okay, let's finish the physical. So
First for
stability.
method.
Come again, sorry?
Method too.
Yeah, these have been proposed by CNET, but I mean, not. I don't know if this is used also in the African region. Do you have experience with that?
For myself, no, this is my first time hearing the Pario method. I was just wondering what it is.
It's same like IDO method, but it's automatic. So I'm not sure if it's good to keep.
Yeah, there is one guy named Attila Nemes who is working in Norway at the moment. He has made a lot of different measurements. And so his comment is you get the same result as a hydrometer, but it takes much more time, roughly. So
and expensive too.
Yeah, more of it's expensive. And you need a very good control of the temperature, what is sometimes quite difficult in tropical areas.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's very interesting at the moment.
Yeah, from that perspective, then I would support you definitely that it might not be ideal at the moment, yes.
Sorry, I have to write again because I could not edit the previous one. So for the physical, I will then remove the Pario method from the list of Afrilab suggested methodologies. I will keep the aggregate stability and K-SAT. Do you agree to maintain that? So saturated hydraulic conductivity. Are you Do you think this? Are you familiar with this methodology? Do you think we may propose this to GLOSOLAN to harmonize?
For me, yes, but I'm not sure if all labs are okay with it or not.
You can also write in the chat if you have opinions on we are talking about K-SAT, so the saturated hydraulic conductivity. Let's first finish with the physical. Yeah, who's there?
I just wanted to check with anyone who is familiar with the K-SAT, just to give us a one or two words on it. Is that for hydraulic conductivity?
Yes.
Saturated hydraulic conductivity.
Ah, okay.
There are devices to do that, but we can do it without device too, just with cylinder and water, so it can be possible too. It's for this case, I'm asking if other labs do that or not.
I think it's obvious it's not a very popular analysis in Africa here. So, I mean, I don't consider it one of our priorities for now.
Okay, but almost the time people use it in the field. So this method, it's in the lab. It's for this case, because almost people do Berkan method in the field or by amphitrometer, and this method, it's inside the lab. So it's dependent.
I mean, if it was a popular method, we'll see more people. I mean, for the, I'm not talking of, we know the method exists, but how many labs in Africa are actually doing the analysis? If you are not doing the analysis, you may not be able to contribute meaningfully to the harmonization. So let it be handled by people who are doing it more on a regular basis. That's the issue.
Maybe we can try to keep it as a proposal, and then we will further discuss at a global meeting, so among GLOSOLAN and experts from other regions, if there is any other laboratory working with K-SAT, then we may group them together in a working group and see, let them work on that. We may note this to and share during the next meeting of GLOSOLAN, and to the GLOSOLAN technical committee who will eventually make the final decision. So we propose this as well. But what about laser granulometry? Do you think this method is not really adopted in the region, and most people normally use pipette and hydrometer, or do you think laser is used?
I know there are labs in Niger who have this device and needing help, but I don't know if this lab are here today. Someone from Niger, because he wrote to me about it too. So it's depending if this lab is here today and want to harmonize this method or not.
Anan,
yes.
Sûrement vous parlez de Dr. Mounir Mustafa. Sorry, you are talking of Dr. Mounir Mustafa. He is in the laboratory that's really working with devices like this. Presently, he's not in Niger, he's in India. He's in India for another...
No, it's not Mustafa, it's Zakaria.
Okay, Zakaria.
Umbama. It's from CILSS.
Okay, SILS. From SILS?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I don't know about him. I thought you were talking of the one in Iliri. Sorry.
No, not in person.
Okay.
So if no one working about this device, maybe we can raise it, Philippe.
Okay. So we may keep this for later on. I will we can postpone it. It's not really the priority for the region, as far as I understood. Now, should we move to?
Please. However, please, yeah, I can suggest you contact them the person you're very you are very aware of them working on this, having this device. You can contact them individually and ask them to support.
So I will meet him next week. So I can talk with him and if you can connect.
All right.
Good. Okay, so let's move to the chemical parameters. So the last group, we already discussed the physical and the biological one. So for chemical, I noticed that Lucrezia noted the mineral nitrogen and ammonium nitrogen, nitrate nitrogen. I'm checking the chat if there were any other proposals. These were the proposed. Okay, first, let me show you again the SOPs we are working on those that GLOSOLAN already worked on. So for chemical ones, we have all these color in, let's say, pale pink. So the first row are all chemical SOPs that GLOSOLAN is harmonizing now or already harmonized. So consider that. These are the requests from the other network. So Ninalab suggested to work on soluble anions, soluble cations, and then Eurozolan people, so the network of Europe and Eurasia, asked to work on mineral nitrogen. For this, what regard the chemical parameters. I'm trying to read to the chat to see there is any suggestions or requests. I see Anne asked for cadmium, lead, and arsenic. So pollutants, but some of them. Let me write them now here. Just to let you, because we cover it here, we have
last year in quasi
total, this one, and there's also the available micronutrients extraction that covers some micronutrients. So maybe this one we can consider to be covered. Sorry, but we're working with you on that. And I'm reading through the chat if there is any other suggestions on chemical parameters, or please take the floor. So far, it seems the only proposal is from the one of Rose on mineral nitrogen. Is there anyone else?
Phosphorus by resin extraction method, say Emmanuel.
Emmanuel say, okay, resin phosphorus. Okay, thanks, Miriam, for that. Okay, are laboratories familiar with this resin phosphorus?
Yes, we are familiar with it, yes.
Okay.
Actually, it's one of the popular methods that we have in Zimbabwe as well, because it was verified by field trials. So whenever we do MELIC 3 or BRAE 1, we also relate to resin extractable P, because that is what was actually validated on the fields.
Is there a specific method to extract this?
Sorry?
Is there a specific method to extract it?
Yes, it is just extraction with the Dawex resin number 17, and you just shake, you just shake overnight, and then you leach with the HCl, and then with the sodium hydroxide, the phosphate go down, and you just color complex.
Okay, no, sorry, because I wasn't familiar with that, but happy that it came out. So I think we already mentioned several countries adopting that. Should we go for that? So resin extractable phosphorus. I don't see any negative comments on that. CC, oh, wait just a second. So let me put this in green. Anion exchange resin. I think they're saying that anion exchange resin is like combined with phosphorus. Is that correct? I'm reading in the chat the comment from Emmanuel. Maybe Emmanuel, you may take the floor and explain.
No, Filippo, I'm not talking about the same method.
Okay, so there's another one. Okay. Wait, so because I'm reading in the chat, this one came out as well. Any on extractable resin? And then Anan, you wrote CC, but we already have CC by ammonium acetate already published. Are you referring to another CC?
I was talking about this one, so I didn't see it was already.
Yeah, actually, yeah, we published last week, so it's online on the GLOSOLAN webpage. Okay. The one on what is it here? CC, an exchangeable basis. There is one unique SOP.
Okay, merci.
Don't worry. It's a recent new one, so maybe you were not informed. Anion exchange resin is one of the extractive. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, well, these are the same as far as understanding.
It's the same. Yes.
Okay,
thank
sorry.
you.
Thanks for clarifying. What about the proposal of Rose Ndango about mineral nitrogen by ammonium and nitrogen? So this one.
No, it's not. It's the different forms. There are the two mineral nitrogen forms.
Wait, come again, sorry. I didn't hear you well.
No, I am saying that it's mineral nitrogen. Those are the two forms of mineral nitrogen, which can be either by KCl extraction using different extractants. That's
we have some work on nitrogen already here.
We have done total nitrogen, I guess. I think it's total nitrogen we worked on.
How is total nitrogen by Dumas, and then we have
that is total. That is the total.
Yeah. But
how is it related to the KCl one? How is this one related to the KCl one?
That's it. It's a KCl extract, and then the extract is analyzed. So this is like the available forms.
Yeah, this is the plant available. You're right. That's the plant available. It's different with the total, where you need sulfuric acid to convert the ammonia to the ammonium sulfate, the nitrate to the ammonium sulfate as well. But this one now, uses now the catalyst, so that you are only getting the portion of ammonium nitrogen or a nitrate nitrogen, as separate or as combined. You can do it as combined, as separate. So this is what is exactly available. Because if you need to interpret the mineral nitrogen from the total, you now have to estimate using a percentage of, say, 2%, they say, is what is now the total that is available in a single season. So mineral nitrogen is a more exact way, because you can even work on incubation. Incubation now works on the pattern of mineralization. And now you relate to exactly what happens in the soil, rather than to work from a total where it's some of the nitrogen may never be available by conversion.
Thanks for the clarification. So we have these two methodologies. Let's try to decide, because people are, I'm seeing they are, as we are late, they're moving to other meetings. So are you all fine with this proposal of proposing?
Filippo?
Yeah.
Filippo? Yes. We was working with ammonium and nitrogen by chloride of potassium by Bremer. So we destilamos, translate, destilamos por separado ammonium nitrate.
Yeah, what Miriam is doing is that, as you may see here, yeah, we work with Maya Romic, the chair of GLOSOLAN, to work on mineral nitrogen already, but somehow we are stuck. We are stopped with this procedure. We have to go on, but indeed it would be nice if we can move on, so we can try to relaunch this proposal, so we can finalize that. So let's find experts on this. Maybe, as I think there is some kind of consensus on this, let's check the, let's consider mineral nitrogen. And we will join the experts that already started working on this a few years ago, but they stopped for other commitments, but so we can move forward on that. So thanks, Miriam, for clarifying that. I read in the chat, I don't see any other proposals. So I think we are fine with this. So for biological parameters, Afrilab will propose to GLOSOLAN to harmonize DNA extraction with Zobia classification and earthworm sampling and identification. For physical one, case saturated and aggregate stability. And then we have for chemical parameters, mineral nitrogen, and then resin extractable phosphorus. These are the proposals that Afrilab will share with the Afrilab, with GLOSOLAN during the GLOSOLAN meeting. So I think we should go forward and close the meeting because we are a little bit late in the agenda. Just to wrap up a bit. So if you have any questions on the PT, on the proficiency test of GLOSOLAN, on your laboratory performance, on how the data have been processed and the statistical analysis done, you may contact me and Lucrezia, and we will put you in contact with Christian Hartmann, that is the one who is the one that processed the results of the laboratory. All laboratories will receive soon, if you didn't receive it yet, the individual report of your participation to the PT. We are working on that. We will deliver all the certificates in few days. And a global report will be published also to explain all the analysis of the results and how data have been processed. These are the SOPs we decide to harmonize. If you have any question for Mr. Cornelius Zemba, who gave the presentation on the relation between farmers and laboratories, he put his email in the chat. I may put it again. I would like to thank him again for the nice presentation. I think it was very useful to hear from him. The mail address I'm putting in the chat. I warmly encourage you to visit the GLOSOLAN website because everything is there. SOPs, recording of the training we implemented, and I would like to announce to you that we are going to plan, hopefully soon, some webinars on calibration. These webinars will be targeting calibration of laboratory equipment, mostly oven, pH meter, and scale, so balances. We will try to do this in English, French, Arabic, and Spanish. So these webinars will be done hopefully before the end of the year. And then again, next year, we will try to organize this in-person training among Afrilab members, so laboratory staff members from Africa, all together to meet, to go do some training on calibration, implementation of the SOPs, and quality control, which is maybe the major issue as coming out from the PT report. And hopefully another PT will be organized among Afrilab laboratories later in 2023. I would like to thank you a lot for this. If you have any other request on training you would like to receive, or if you are available to give any training, please let us know and we can organize this training together online. So please always contact me, Lucrezia, if you have any issues, any requests. I would like to thank you for staying even beyond the time that was given to the meeting. I would like to give the floor back to the chair and vice chair of GLOSOLAN and Afrilab. I would like also to thank all the moderators, all those of you that took the floor over the discussion. I think it was very nice. And also again, thanks to Cornelius Zemba. Thanks also to my colleague Julio Musquer for providing the translation in Portuguese, and Sheikh for giving it in French yesterday. So I would like to give the floor to Mustafa, Miriam, Lesego, if you have any remark to close the meetings.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very
yes. Well. Okay. Let me take this time to say I'm very, very happy that we all came and we all participated. The participation was very good. I know that I disappeared for some time today. I just had challenges of network, but when I came in, you already way ahead. And I would like to say I really enjoyed all the presentations. I wish I had the opportunity to make contributions to the presentation from Zambia, because what he said about the farmers testing in South Africa and all the like, I think we need to discuss that because it's not only a challenge in Zambia, it's also a challenge in Botswana, where people prefer to go and test samples in South Africa instead of locally, just because they don't trust or they claim they don't get the results on time. Also, they will claim they are doing the samples outside for free, not realizing that it's not for free because they are actually going to be buying the fertilizers from the specific country where they tested. But otherwise, the participation was very good, and I'm very happy that we all came. Please, let's use what we have shared here. Let's keep on communicating, talking to each other. Let's keep on sharing whatever information we have so that we build the strong Afrilab. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Christiana, for the proficiency testing. And thank you, everybody, for the participation. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lesego. I don't know if Miriam and Abdurrahman Mustafa, you have any other comments to close the meeting? I would like also to remind you that all presentations, including the one of Mr. Zemba, will be uploaded shortly on the Afrilab webpage, and also the video recording of this meeting. So if you want to have a look again, and please do remember to send us a short video of your laboratory to me, Lucrezia, saying "Happy birthday, GLOSOLAN," so we can include your clip in the video that we will be displayed during the GLOSOLAN 5th anniversary on the 10th of November. So please remember to do that by the end of the month. Mustafa, I don't know if you have any remark. And then Miriam, and then we close.
Thanks, everybody. Maybe our president, Miriam, will say something. As far as I'm concerned, Lesego has already said everything. I'm so grateful for what she said. I don't know, Miriam, do you have something to say?
I only want to say thank you to everyone. I think it's very important, the broad participation, the 2 days of this meeting and the interest shown by all the participants, both in terms of technical issues, was typical of laboratory work, and the interest in connecting the laboratory work with what we need to be done in the field. I think is very important to highlight the need to calibrate the methods with the response of crops in the field and with the evolution of soil characteristics, for example, carbon sequestration, evolution of different problems such as saline soils, etc. In all this, the connection of the focal points with the reference laboratory is very important. So I think it was very important, the participation of the focal points in this meeting. And of course, it's very important all the subjects of the themes, the topics we discuss in say, thanks all of you by the interest. And I think you need, we need to continue participate in the discuss, in the work we have to this meeting. So thank you, all leaders.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Miriam. Thanks a lot, Mustafa, Lesego, all participants, all moderators, all the guests, Mr. Zemba, Julia, everyone, all the members of the Afrilab steering committee. I see here Tekshu, Rolf, Hanan, Sadiq, everyone. See you at the GLOSOLAN anniversary on 10th of November, and then during the GLOSOLAN annual meeting from the 22nd to the 24th of November. Have a nice rest of the day. Thanks a lot for your commitment and participation. Au revoir, merci beaucoup. Bye-bye.
Merci, au revoir.
Merci. Bye.
Au revoir. Au revoir. Au revoir.